Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar on your body language and how it impacts on your job interview. And the reality is your body language can make or break your job interview. And I want to share with you today 6 tips, 6 things to be aware of whenever you get before a job interview panel. And these tips are kind of generic. So let's say you're in a tribunal or a court of law, or even doing a presentation. Some of these tips still apply to those other presentation style environments. But today's, I guess I've targeted for job interview because I know people work hard. They put in a really good curriculum vitae. They get to the job application, to the job interview, they do really well, but their body language lets them down. So let's get underway. So Peter Jew's my name. I'm a public speaking trainer and coach, and I really love to help people be more confident, more effective in their presentation skills, whether it's for job interviews, whether it's for pre-start meetings, whether it's for toolbox meetings or those important conferences. How to participate? Most of you have done my webinars before. Ask questions as we go. Feel free to add comments and think about how this might apply to yourself. So your next interview, job interview, your next tribunal appearance, your next acting as a witness, what's your non-verbals saying about you? And I share this image from Malcolm Gladwell. Malcolm Gladwell is a great author around social commentary, Blink, Outliers, Tipping Point, all best-selling business books. And this particular one, What the Dog Saw, talks about the first 15 seconds. So as you walk into a room, as you sit down, as you start to speak, as you shake hands, that first 15 seconds, very little words are spoken. And good morning, Desiree. We've just started. Very little spoken in that first 15 words, but people have formed an opinion with you. So what Malcolm Gladwell found was that they recorded a full 1 hour job interview. So 60 minutes, 45 minutes, the full 1 hour interview. Then they got the interview panel to rate you on not your technical skills, not your experience, not your level of knowledge, but your emotional intelligence, your interpersonal skills. So your sincerity, your authenticity, your honesty, your integrity, those soft skills that are becoming more and more important in job interviews. Your ability to connect and build rapport. They've spent an hour with you. They're now rating you on your soft skills. They now splice off the first 15 seconds of that 1 hour job interview. It's just the 15 seconds. They now go downtown to Hay Street Mall in Perth, Burke Street Mall in Melbourne, Pitt Street Mall in Sydney, Queen Street Mall in Brisbane, and show 20 random people the first 15 seconds. They now give them the same rating scale that the job interview panel has spent an hour looking at you, talking to you, listening to you, and they've rated you. They're giving these random audience that have only seen the first 15 seconds. This is walk in the door, good morning, handshake, the way you stand, your breathing, you take your seat, the smile, first 15 seconds, not all that long. And what they found was that the correlation between what the interview panel saw and what the people with the random people in the first 15 seconds was 80% correlated. In other words, people have formed an opinion of you and judged you from your interpersonal communication, your emotional intelligence perspective in the first 15 seconds. They've got your CV, they've got your qualifications, they know how many years you've worked, but what's this person really like? How's he going to fit in with our culture? 15 seconds. Wow, that is amazing. So that's why your body language is so important. Your body is speaking so loudly, I cannot hear the words that you are speaking. Let's get underway. So tip number 1, sit upright in the chair. This is to help you build peak physiology. Most people sit back in the chair or they slump in the chair. So peak physiology is as for the concert celloist or the concert violinist who sits in the front 2/3 of the chair. The back does not touch the chair. And this is for peak physiology, for breathing, for concentration, for oxygenating your brain. As soon as you sit back, your diaphragm collapses a little bit, your voice changes, your energy level also drops. And my particular chair, the seat is back a little bit. Even with the vertical chair, like this gentleman here, he sits forward in his chair without your back. That's peak physiology, sitting slightly forward, space between your back and the chair, and that's how you get in the best physiology. You look assertive, you look confident, getting ready for that job interview, during the job interview. There is a slight variation, and I'll talk about that later on. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, your arms need to be relaxed and confident. I guess there's that aggressive closed approach, which we're seeing here. So the arms folded, and not that people would put their arms on the hips, but when you present arms on the hips, it's also seen as kind of aggressive. The reverse is when you kind of sit passively and shrivel up and put your hands between your legs. So it's this nice, comfortable resting position. On my tummy when I'm sitting down is really good. The other thing is I can also rest my hands on the table, but just don't fiddle. And if you have a pen, please don't do the clicking or twiddle the pen while it's on the table. So hands gently rest on the table, that's fine. One hand on the table, ready to make a gesture when you need to, and then back to whatever your resting position is, on the table or on your lap. I like mine on my lap, so it's below the table and it's less distracting. And when I need to gesture, I'll just bring my hand out from under the table and just say, two things I want to share with you. So this is tip number 2. Make sure your arms are relaxed. A good TED Talk to help you prepare for job interviews, and I think I may be going to speak about this as we move through, but I'll jump straight ahead. And I mention this quite often around nonverbal. It's a TED Talk. And if you're not watching TED Talks, you should be, TED.com. And it's by a lady named Amy Cuddy. Harvard business professor, C-U-D-D-Y, I'm using a mouse to write. So Amy talks about the power of your nonverbal communication. Worthwhile watching that. Use your powerful language before you go into the job interview, but in the job interview, use neutral, confident, and relaxed arms and relaxed nonverbal communication. All right. So you're sitting in the seat nice and upright, as I am now. My back is not on the seat. My arms are not aggressive. They're nice and relaxed. Tip number 3, your eye contact. Eye contact's really important. Eye contact is how we build trust, how we connect, build rapport with the audience. Eye contact is how we read what's happening with the interview panel. If you're not making eye contact and the interview panel is shaking their head, or maybe you're losing them a little bit, then you're not going to see that. Your eye contact is how you read what's happening in the room with everyone else. So eye contact, one-on-one interview, watch the person speaking, nice relaxed gestures for the person on the left. Person on the right is making small one-handed gestures as you would in an interview. One-on-one, 100% eye contact will be a little bit awkward, so you need to go to a third point every now and then. When you're thinking, you might just want to go down, but make eye contact when you're speaking. Really important when you have a panel, you need to make eye contact with all the interview panel. The mistake that people make with their eye contact is that one person asks the question, and then for the next 2 minutes that you're responding to the question, you make eye contact solely with this person. And these 3 people, and this person may feel that they're getting some eye contact because they're next door, but these 3 people, you've lost them. So the rule with a panel of 3 or more people is eye contact with everyone. So the way to do it is this person asks the question, start by making eye contact with that person, especially as you're listening and receiving the question. Feel free to paraphrase it back to that question and get that nod so you're clear you've heard the question properly, especially those triple barrel questions. Can you give me an example of when you used your interpersonal skills to resolve conflict and you weren't able to resolve conflict? And thirdly, what would you do differently if you had that same scenario again? So that triple barrel, you need to reflect those back. Then, as you're answering, make eye contact with that person. Then you might randomly move back to that person and then move back to this person, include this person. In other words, you've now got a topic and you're doing a mini speech to all 5 people in that interview panel equally. And then as you finish, just come back and close the question with this person. So that's how I would resolve conflict between 2 staff members, and then close it out with the person who opened the question. As I said, common mistake, eye contact solely with the person who asks you the question. This not only happens in job interviews, by the way, this also happens in Q&A at conferences. So you've got 250 people in the room, one person down the front asks the question and the speaker delivers the entire 2-minute response to that one person. So glad you asked that question. So glad you asked that question. And they talk and talk and talk. And then all the audience around the back is thinking, well, why am I here? Once again, the person who asked the question provides a mini presentation that you now deliver to everyone in the room with equal eye contact as when you're presenting in a non-question and answer session. So the question and answer session should not stop you from engaging everyone in the room. Same with the job interview panel. So that's tip number 3. Gestures. I've kind of touched on this just a little bit. As the room gets bigger, so you're doing the conference, your gestures get bigger and bigger. It's just natural because people way down the back behind you, 10 rows back, if you gesture small around your waist and around your midriff, people are not going to see these little gestures. But as you get to a room of 10 or 15 people, when I'm running a workshop or facilitation, then my gestural space is around about here. One-on-one or with the interview panel, you don't need to say, so it was this big, because it's going to look really silly. My recommendation often is with job interviews, you only need one hand and just that little one hand gesture. So yeah, look, I think we should urge caution there. Look, in my view, and those one-handed gestures, not noisy, not all the time, one-handed gestures is enough. But to lock away your gestures and put your hands under the table and to not gesture at all is reducing some of your ability to communicate. Those of you who've done my body language nonverbal communication workshops and webinars will know that these hands and your face and your other things, your other nonverbals, account for over half your message. So to lock them away and put them under the table or on your chest completely means you're just limiting your ability to engage the audience. Approachable, palms up. Look, so I'm really pleased to be here today. That's a great question, but you also need to be credible. So credible is palms down. The toughest thing with resolving that interpersonal conflict was I had to make the decision that, the two people out there needed some extra training. So my palm down is a little bit more credible. My palm up is, hey, I'm really pleased to be here. A little bit more approachable. You may have noticed some head bobbing as well, but that's another webinar. Credibility, my head stays still. I don't bob. I soften my voice. This is a really serious situation. This is what I would recommend that you should all do. Does that make sense? I'm now becoming more approachable, a little bit smile. I'm now seeking your buying. I'm trying to connect. When I'm getting credible, I'm not seeking your buying. I'm sending you information. You may remember our previous Prime Minister, Julia Gillard. She had the little head bob going all the time, which is nice and approachable, but sometimes when she's delivering policies and delivering news and wants to be credible, it's better to keep your head still. And Julia sometimes didn't enjoy, I'll stop bobbing now, sometimes didn't enjoy the connection with the Australian people that I think she deserved. And part of it was her nonverbal communication. Gestures, use them, small, one-handed gestures, that's all you need. I'm going to pause for a moment. Are there any questions about those first 4 tips? So we've got about 12 minutes to go, so I've got time for questions. How do you know what gestures to use? Thanks, Steve. Look, your gestural vocabulary, and that's, I guess, a word that I think we should all use. So it's your gestural vocabulary. You need to grow it over time. Vocabulary. I'm not a very good speller. Your gestural vocabulary. So sometimes as you're growing gestures and you need to link things, you need to connect, you need to reframe things. You would know, I would know, 2 things I want to share with you. You start to build those gestures naturally. Don't practice your vocabulary at interview. Don't say, okay, I've seen Peter's webinar and he wants me to do a list of 3. So first thing, second thing, third thing. It looks artificial. You've got to be just spontaneous. So over time, like learning to drive a car, you now just drive it. You don't think about changing gears. You don't think about indicating left or right, braking. You just do it. You become unconsciously competent. As with nonverbals and growing that gestural vocabulary, you'll probably find that you need to practice and put in some new gestures that mean something to you. And then over time, they just spontaneously come out, and make sure they're appropriate and they add value or are in line, parallel with what you're saying. If your gestures are not congruent or not parallel with what you're saying, you may give mixed messages. So thanks for that question. All right, no other questions? Moving on. Tip number 5 is once again, oh no, we're still on gestures. The other mistake is, so I shouldn't bring up a Labor Prime Minister without bringing up a Liberal Prime Minister. Apologies for anyone who's Greens. I'm kind of apolitical, but please do not bounce your hands up and down in line with the words that you are saying. This is very, very distracting, and some of you are just hoping that I'll stop bouncing my hands. So remember that what we need to do is to, please, don't do noisy hand gestures. I'm noticing that more and more the video cameras on Malcolm Turnbull on the news, they are limiting the vision to his head and shoulders. I didn't draw that very well. To his head and shoulders, because you know below his hands are bouncing up and down in a really distracting way. The bounce is just noise. Make your gestures by all means. Do invite people. Just don't do the bounce. All right, that's enough on that. Avoid noisy, bouncy gestures. How do you know? Good question, Sarah. How do you know if you have bouncy gestures? You need to get feedback. You need to let people know. Send a video recording to a coach. Practice in the mirror. And if as you're growing your gestural vocabulary, you notice that your hands bounce, just try and silence them. Make your body language positive. Look confident. And this is the Amy Cuddy TED Talk. If you were coaching me to walk on stage and speak, if you were coaching me to walk into the interview panel, take a seat, shake the hands of the interview members before I sit down, what would you tell me to do? Smile, Peter. Shoulders up. Breathe deeply. Look confident. Don't walk in with fig leaves. Hands around your groin, shoulders down, looking small, trying to stay out of the spotlight. Look confidently. Don't look aggressive. Look like you want to be there. The handshake. Mirror and match the handshake. If they give you a soft handshake and it's a female interview member, then match it. As the handshake comes out, match it. Don't turn it on top and be dominating and crush the hands. Don't give out what we call the wet fish. Don't give the wet fish handshake. Mirror and match. Nodding in agreement and smile when they smile. What would you tell someone to do that was going into a stressful interview? What would you tell someone to do in their body language as they're about to walk on stage in front of 250 people? Tell yourself that. You know what it is. Smile, confident, really pleased to be here. And tip number 6, what if you're losing the panel? Clearly, I love this photo. Clearly, these people, did you really say that? Are disinterested. And, sort of one sitting back, one sitting forward. You are responsible for the energy of that interview panel. If you're losing them, then you need to pick up your energy level and start to mirror and match them and bring them on the journey with you. And one way to do that is to sit upright, lean forward into their space, disrupt them a little bit, and then sit back into that confident position, and you just pick up your energy. So all of a sudden they know that you want to be there, you're energized, you're excited, as opposed to these guys flagged down. Hello, this guy's just going on. So I just ignore that and I slump back and I say, well, this is a waste of time, but I'll keep talking anyhow. And I don't think I've got much chance of this job interview because I've lost the panel. And we just sit back, fade away. We don't disrupt. If I see the panel fading and I'm losing them, then I'll sit up, increase my energy, increase my intensity, increase the eye contact. So a few more seconds Normally 2 to 3 seconds is the sweet spot, so I might go to 4 to 5 seconds, and all of a sudden they know I know what they're doing, and they will react, they will re-energize, and they'll start to pay more attention. Now, no need to judge these people. I wouldn't judge them. You might be interview number 5. They may have already done 4 people. They might be tired. They may need a break. Job interviews are tiring, but you can re-energize them. You've got new energy. You're only there for an hour. You can pump your energy into them by energizing yourself, disrupting their behavior, their nonverbal, and making longer eye contact. So they are 6 tips that I teach my clients that want to improve their job interview skills around the nonverbal component. There's other tips around structure, how to answer questions, what to do with unexpected questions, but this is just around the nonverbal communication. So those 6 tips are: sit upright in the chair as opposed to slouch. Make sure you have not relaxed arms, but relaxed arms. Eye contact with everyone in the room, not just one-on-one. Gestures, one-handed gestures. Make your body language positive as you move in the room, as you sit. And if the panel loses you, this is your opportunity to disrupt, take the lead, re-energize yourself, make some eye contact with them, and let them know that you know that they're flagging, and you're going to give them some of your energy. Any last questions, just as I'm wrapping up? Next webinars, tips to use your voice. So this is going even narrower in nonverbal. The things that you can do with your voice are amazing. The power of the pause, the softening of the voice, a little bit around credibility. We just touched on all these things that you can do with your voice as a speaker, trainer, facilitator, to create great impact. And later on in March, 5 strategies you can use if your mind, what was I going to say? Goes blank. 5 strategies to use if your mind goes blank. And this one's based around, I love to teach people to present without reading from their script, without reading from their notes, just that extemporaneous presentation. That's where you engage your audience. But you do risk. What was I going to say next? So strategies around that. Workshops all around the place. Port Hedland next week, Karratha as well. Then over to Brisbane in March, other workshops in Perth in March. Off to Mildura and Bendigo in mid-April. Those workshops, there will be some open workshops. We're doing workshops for organisations there, but they will advertise them. So if you've got any colleagues or friends that may be interested, feel free to share those workshops. They're on my website, and if I can be of any further assistance, or Darwin, Bendigo is there, Darwin in May, and yeah, feel free to share the information with any friends or colleagues. It's on our website. If you haven't seen my Stories Out Loud movie, goes for 7 minutes, please have a look at that. If you have any further questions, post this webinar, send me an email, and I'm happy to provide any answers I can. So just remember, 15 seconds. People have determined your interpersonal skills, your emotional intelligence, that first 15 seconds. That's how the job interview panel determines who gets the job. They've got your CVs, 2 CVs the same. You've both got 10 years experience. Which one's going to fit in with our culture? Which one's going to be able to deal with our difficult clientele? Oh, wow, this person looks really confident, well-adjusted, has good values, honesty, integrity. 15 seconds of nonverbal communication is how you send that information across. Good luck with your next job interviews, your next presentations. Just remember, your job interview matters. Sorry, your nonverbal communication matters. Your body speaks so loudly, I can't hear the words that you are saying. Bye for now. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.